And finally, tonight, authorities in Brussels shut down a conservative conference yesterday. This coming from the Daily Wire. The headline is Brussels authorities order shutdown of right wing gathering. Brussels authorities ordered the shutdown of the National Conservatism Conference to ensure public security. Yeah, they say that. The keynote speaker, Nigel Farage, called the move monstrous. So joining me now is Saurabh Sharma, who is the president of American Moment. So there's some interesting kind of background to this. What led up to this, and why would Brussels possibly not allow a conservative conference?
Sure thing, Jenna. So I'm also the executive director of the Edmund Burke Foundation, which puts on national conservatism conferences in the United States and Europe. The goal of these conferences is to get patriotic nationalist conservatives together to talk about issues like immigration and economic prosperity and preserving a common culture, basic common sense stuff. And we were ready to host our second conference in Brussels just a few days ago for the last few months, and we had booked this venue called Concert Noble that's right across the street from the European Parliament. We'd hosted a conference there before. We thought it would be completely conventional logistics. A few days before the conference, Concert Noble pulls out. And they say, because of security concerns, we're not going to be able to host you. And we scramble and we find a second venue, the Sofitel, and they end up signing a contract with us. And then Monday night before the Tuesday conference, they pull out as well. It is 6 o'clock on Monday and we have no venue. We find a third venue, and it is right around noon of the day of the conference that we realize what exactly is going on. The mayor of Brussels had been engaged in a pressure campaign against these hotels, getting them to cancel our conference. And because this venue would not comply, he sent out a message saying that by order of the mayor of Brussels, this conference is not allowed to happen for safety reasons and because of Antifa hecklers. And so he literally gave Antifa a heckler's veto. But he also includes plenty of little snippy lines in his press release where he says that these are homophobes and traditionalists and Eurosceptics. And that's plenty of reason to cancel the conference as well. And so the police show up at our event, three police officers, and they come inside ready to tell us we have to shut everything down. They'd given us sort of a verbal indication that the event had to close. We didn't budge. We didn't feel the need to yet. And they walk in, they see the cameras, they see 400 undeterred people, and they literally say to us, we're not playing this game. So they walk out and they come up with a compromise solution. They're going to try to kill us by attrition. They're going to stand outside, and if anyone leaves, they're not allowed to come back in. So you would think, oh, this is midday of the conference. People need their lunch. They got caterers to take all the food away. But no, people stayed for the entire conference all through the end of the day. There were a bunch of speakers that were scheduled to come in later in the day that had a varying set of things happen to them. Some of them were just completely turned away at the door, like presidential candidate Eric Zemmour from France. Some of them magically managed to find their way into the venue. Hard to say how that happened. That included Cardinal Mueller, who at one point was the third highest ranking Catholic priest in the world, as well as Miriam Cates, an MP from England. So it was a drama-filled day, but at 2 in the morning last night, the court actually said that this was completely unconstitutional under Belgian law, and that we were going to be allowed to continue our conference undeterred, as we did today. Managed to cause an international incident along the way. 4 prime ministers have commented on this, calling it a farce, but it's really been quite a circus.
Wow, this is an incredible story, and good for the Belgium court for actually saying that this is unconstitutional. Because that was going to be my next question. I mean, I thought that Brussels allowed these types of gatherings and had, similar to America, at least a freedom of association and not this type of viewpoint discrimination from the mayor. But what caused them to weigh in? Did you actually have to go and file a petition, or how did they even become aware of this?
Yeah, so we were pursuing multiple courses of action as soon as things started to get really dicey over the weekend. Our friends over at Alliance Defending Freedom put a bunch of attorneys pro bono on this case. We had a paid lawyer as well helping us out. And so we were simultaneously at multiple different levels trying to find an answer to this problem. And eventually they were, in fact, victorious at 2 in the morning. Even the Belgian prime minister, who is a liberal of all liberals, put out a tweet yesterday saying that this was a complete joke and that this is unconstitutional under Belgian law. Now, Belgium has a very weak prime minister, and so he wasn't necessarily able to do something about it aggressively. But it certainly sent a message that this wasn't about the content of the conference, which was fine, to be clear, but it was about the values of free speech that a lot of Europeans still think that they uphold. But this was proof positive that if Brussels is allowed to control the entire European continent, which they want to, and what these upcoming elections are about, that conservative speech, conservative ideas, conservative values will not be tolerated in any country. So Europeans should really watch out.
Wow, I mean, how dare you talk about things, that are conservative principles and values? I mean, this has been heralded as right-wing extremism here in America, and we're seeing that now play out in other Western society and Europe. And this is very dangerous to freedom of speech, free exchange of ideas. And so it's good that definitely that you had this significant win. But what does this portend for Europe as a whole? I mean, you mentioned the upcoming elections, and I think that there are a number of other European countries that are trying to shut this type of speech down. I mean, you look at even the mayor of London, for example, that is Islamic, as well as the mayor of Brussels. I mean, does that kind of have anything to do with this, or is it just that it is left wing rhetoric trying to shut down conservative viewpoints?
Look, there is definitely ideological bias undergirding this. If you read the translation of the Brussels mayor's press release talking about this order, he could have easily said that this was purely a matter of public safety, left it to that, kept it to one or two paragraphs. Instead, he goes on for two or three paragraphs about all of the supposed errors in our way of thinking, that we're traditionalists or that we're Eurosceptics and so on, and that really it's for our own good. We really shouldn't be having this kind of conference for our own sake because these are bad ideas. And it just goes to show you what the left means when it says liberal democracy. Liberal democracy, according to left wingers, is when they win and you lose. It really just comes down to that. Every means is on the table, every tactic is on the table. And this socialist mayor really showed what the situation was. Has he been nearly as aggressive, preventing actual Islamic radicals and terrorist sympathizers from organizing in
Of
Brussels?
course
Of
not.
course not. There's plenty of that going on at all times. Does he do anything to bust up Antifa, which was the casus belli for shutting down this event in the first place? Absolutely not.
Of
Open
course not. And
communist
we'll have to
radicals
leave it
have
there.
violent.
But, this just goes back to the same thing that I said at the very beginning of the program. If Democrats and leftists didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all. We'll see you tomorrow night.